So I've done a couple book hauls recently. One was quite large, but that was to be expected. I had been holding off on buying a lot of books until my local library had their used book sale, which I knew would be coming up soon. So as expected, I bought a lot of books there. I spent $7 and got 9 books, so I feel like that was a pretty good deal. However, the fact remains that with the purchase of those books, I no longer have enough space on my TBR shelf for all of my TBR books. So between that and wanting to save money and wanting to focus more on the books that I already have and all of the encouraging videos I've seen on BookTube about this topic recently, I decided that it was time for a change. So this video is about how my TBR got to be in the state that it's in currently and what my new book buying plan is. So today I got one book in the mail. This is the last book I will be receiving for a while, which is kind of coincidental because it's called The Last Policeman. This is by Ben H. Winters, and I actually won this in the Dewey's 24-hour readathon. I was super excited. I didn't really know much about this book. I think I had vaguely heard about it, and then when I was looking at the options, once I won the giveaway, I was looking to see what books I could pick from, and this just seemed like something I would really enjoy. It's about a policeman who is investigating a murder during basically the apocalypse. Like, there's an asteroid heading to Earth and the world's going to end, and yet he's investigating this murder even though everyone else is completely abandoning their jobs. That's pretty much all I know about it, and I love mysteries, and the idea of a murder mystery set in the end of the world just sounds really fascinating to me, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. So that's it. That is the last book that I will be receiving or buying or anything, at least until Christmas. I might get books for Christmas, I don't know, but I will not be purchasing any books for a while. My new plan is to do what I've seen on several BookTube channels and do the read 5 before I buy, where you read 5 books on your TBR shelf before you can buy another one. I feel like that's better than not buying any books at all because I really want Amy Poehler's book, basically. I feel like with the read 5 before you buy, you automatically shrink your TBR shelf down to 20% of what it was, just mathematically. And then that's huge. So I feel pretty good about the reading 5 books and then being able to buy one. So as I mentioned in a previous video, I finished grad school in May, and prior to that I was barely reading at all due to lack of time. I read one book last summer that I know of, and I've read The Hunger Games and the Divergent series while I was in grad school, but other than that, I haven't done a whole lot of reading aside from reading that I did for school. In January, though, I stumbled across a website called paperbackswap.com. I thought it was a brilliant idea where you trade books that you don't want anymore for books that other people have that they don't want anymore, and all you pay for is the cost of shipping your own books, which at first sounds free, but it's not. But still, it's definitely a good way to get cheap books that you can't necessarily find at a used book sale because they're too popular or they're just so random that it's not likely you're going to find them at the used book sale. So at the time I had 40 to 60 books that I knew I wasn't ever going to read. They'd been on my TBR shelf forever before I knew what the phrase TBR meant, and I just knew I wasn't going to read them, so I posted them on the site, and a lot of them were requested, and so I mailed them off and then requested books to replace them that I actually wanted to read. And so that's what my TBR shelf is now. That and the few books that I kept and the books that I've gotten at used book sales, mostly. Basically, my TBR didn't shrink despite me getting rid of so many books I knew I wasn't going to read. It actually kind of grew. So it wasn't until April that I had a chance to actually read any of these books that I had been so happily accumulating. One weekend during April, I ended up taking 3 days off work so that I would have a 5-day weekend because I had done the math and determined that there was no other way I was going to be able to finish my thesis. I was working full-time and going to school, so I took off from work for this 5-day weekend and was like, I'm going to write this many pages a day, and when I get to that many pages for the day on my thesis, then I will allow myself to do whatever I want for the rest of the evening. And usually by 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I had my pages done because I'd done all the research. I just needed to type the actual thesis. And usually what I chose to do at that time was to read a book for fun. So the book that I read at that time was The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie by Alan Bradley. I don't have it anymore. I wish I did. I actually got rid of it on paperback swap. I don't know what I was thinking, but I really enjoyed it. So The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie is an English murder mystery told from the point of view of a precocious 11-year-old girl whose main hobby is chemistry. And it's delightful and just so well written, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was exactly what I needed to read at that point because I hadn't read for fun in so long, and it made me excited about reading again. So after that, I started reading again and started reading a lot of the books on my TBR, but then this summer I stumbled across BookTube, and as if I didn't already have enough books that I wanted to read, I started seeing all of these recommendations for other good books that I wanted to buy or read, and so yeah. At this point you may be asking yourself, why didn't you just get them at the library? Well, there were a couple problems with that. The first one, which now isn't really an excuse, but at the time it made sense, was that I had a really bad habit of checking out books at the library and then not reading them because I didn't feel like reading them at that time, or I was too busy to read them. And then I would take them back to the library with fees because they were overdue, having not read any of them. But that excuse kind of fell away a couple months ago when I went to the library and checked out 2 books and actually read them well within the time frame in which I had to read them before I had to take them back. I couldn't remember the last time that had happened, and it kind of confirmed to me that, okay, I really do have time to read books I get at the library now. That is no longer an excuse. So the second problem was this. There are 2 library systems that I have a library card at near me. One is at the town that I actually live in, and one is at the closest large city. Now, the one in the town I actually live in, it's kind of a smaller library, and when I've gone there in the past, they never had a huge selection. Most of the time they didn't have the book that I was looking for, especially current books. The other library in the city, I work in the city, so this library is close to where I work, so it's convenient to get there. And the problem wasn't so much the selection, it was just the availability of that selection, because yes, it's a larger library, so there were more books, but there were also more patrons. So a lot of times, if there was a book that I wanted that was especially popular, like The Hunger Games or the Divergent series or something like that, they didn't have it checked in, and it was on a wait list. So with that being said, it really seemed like paperback swap and used book sales at libraries were my best option, at least until I finished grad school. But now that I know that I can get library books and actually read them, that excuse is gone. And the other problem with the 2 libraries near me kind of resolved itself this weekend when I went to the library in the town I live in and discovered that they have vastly expanded their selection. I had gone there looking for 2 books in particular, and you will soon see that I found both of them. The first was the 3rd and final installment in the Maze Runner trilogy, and I apologize, the reason I'm covering this up with my hand is because the barcode's under there with the name of the library, and this is going on the internet. But this is called The Death Cure by James Dashner. So I wanted to get the 3rd book, but I didn't want to go buy it like I did the Maze Runner and the Scorch Trials, so I thought maybe I'll look out, maybe the library here in town has it. And lo and behold, they did. I was stunned. So I got this. The second book that I was looking for, coincidentally, was the sequel to that book, The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, that I started reading while I was working on my thesis, and was the first book that I really got back into when I first got back into reading this year. So that is The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag by Alan Bradley. And this is the second in a series. I think it's 5 or 6. I think 6 might be the last one. But so I couldn't believe that I found this either. They had the entire series, so it was awesome. So not only did they have those 2 books, but I decided to go to their catalog computer and look up all the books that I had on this Goodreads list I have of books that I really want to read that I don't already have. And there were about 50 books on this list. And of those, the library had probably 80% of them. And of those 80%, about 80% of those were checked in. So I'm super excited that I now know that my library actually has a decent selection, and I can get most of the books that I want to read there for free. So I think it's a very reasonable plan. It'll help me save money, it'll help me to focus. That's something that I sometimes struggle with, is having 12,000 things I want to do and then doing none of them. So I think if I try and focus more on the books that I already own, then one, I'll get more enjoyment out of them, and two, I won't feel like my brain is pulled in a million directions all at once. Also, I'll have more room on my bookshelves. So I'm not saying this is for everyone. If you have a huge TBR and you're totally cool with it, that's great. This was just something that I really wanted to do just because I don't think I was quite there yet, but I felt like I was inching dangerously close to the possibility of enjoying the act of buying books more than the act of actually reading them. So that's my new plan for my TBR and my book buying habits. I'm hoping that posting this video like this will help me feel a little more accountability and actually going forward with it. That's another tendency I have sometimes, is to come up with these great ideas and then completely forget about them a week later. So if you have a large TBR shelf, I'm curious to know how you manage it. So let me know in the comments, and also let me know if you read any really good books lately. I won't be buying them, but I might check and see if they have them at my library. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. It'll help me save money. I think it'll help me focus. That's sometimes something that I struggle with, is having 12,000. That's my cat.